It wasn't the number that stung. Not at first. It was how casually it was said, like a policy, not a choice, like something already approved, signed, archived. He has an MBA from Yale, he gets more. A few heads nodded, reflexively. Quiet alignment without resistance. The kind of agreement that doesn't need words, because it's already built into the system. She didn't react the way they expected. No sharp inhale, no defensive explanation, no attempt to negotiate her worth in real time. Just a pause, precise, almost measured, as if she was marking the exact second something shifted. Then the smile disappeared. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just gone. And somehow that absence carried more weight than any argument ever could. She closed her folder with a soft click, aligned the edge against the table. Exact, deliberate. Control in the smallest details. Across the room, someone shifted in their chair. Another glanced at HR, then quickly away, because something felt off. She stood up. No rush, no hesitation, just a quiet decision that didn't ask for permission. And as she walked out, the room didn't stop her. It watched. What none of them realized yet, not HR, not the ones nodding, not even the one who got more, was that this moment wasn't the end of a conversation. It was the timestamp of a problem. And somewhere else in the building, someone was about to open a file they didn't even know existed. The room reset itself the moment the door clicked shut behind her. Not physically. The chairs stayed where they were, the folders remained open, the coffee cups half finished. But the energy shifted, subtly, almost imperceptibly, like a system recalibrating after a small but critical disruption. HR cleared her throat first. "All right," she said, tone returning to its neutral, procedural baseline. "Let's proceed." And just like that, the meeting continued. Slides advanced, numbers were discussed. Someone made a light comment about quarterly targets that landed flat but was politely acknowledged anyway. The rhythm came back, controlled, predictable, safe, but not entirely stable, because every few minutes someone glanced at the empty chair at the end of the table. It wasn't supposed to matter. People leave meetings all the time. People disagree. People walk out. That's normal. This didn't feel normal. Across the table, Daniel, the one with the MBA, adjusted his sleeve slightly, as if the room had grown warmer. He didn't look up. Not once. Just kept his eyes on the printed sheet in front of him, following lines that suddenly required more focus than usual. He told himself it was nothing. A reaction. An overinterpretation. People get sensitive about compensation. It happens. Still, something about the way she left didn't align with that explanation. No argument, no pushback, no attempt to fix the situation. Just exit, clean, controlled, final. HR continued speaking, outlining compensation structures, benchmarking data, market alignment, the language of fairness, polished and rehearsed. The kind that sounds objective enough to discourage deeper questions. And as mentioned, differentiation based on credentials is standard practice, she added, almost as a closing note. Standard. That word landed differently now, because somewhere in the back of the room, a quiet thought surfaced, uninvited but persistent. Standard doesn't always mean correct. No one said it out loud, but it lingered. The meeting wrapped 10 minutes later. Chairs moved, papers were gathered, conversations restarted in low tones, fragmented, cautious. "Do you think she'll escalate?" someone whispered near the door. A shrug in response. "Probably not. These things usually settle. Usually." Daniel finally stood up, collecting his things with deliberate calm. As he reached for his phone, the screen lit up, a notification banner sliding in silently. Inbox 1, Sender, Compensation Analytics. Subject, Audit Sync, 1510. He frowned slightly. That wasn't on his calendar. Across the room, HR's phone buzzed almost simultaneously. She glanced down, just a second, then another. Her expression didn't change much, but she didn't dismiss the notification either. Instead, she locked her screen, just a fraction too quickly. and for the first time since the meeting began, she didn't look entirely certain. Near the window, someone exhaled quietly. Because the system hadn't reset. It had triggered something, and whatever it was already moving faster than anyone in that room expected. By 3:06, the building felt different. Not visibly, not in a way you could point to on a floor plan or capture in a report, but in the small things. The way conversations shortened mid-sentence, the way Slack messages went unanswered just a little longer than usual, the way people checked their inbox twice instead of once. Signals. Quiet, scattered signals. At 3:08, the CFO's assistant walked past HR's glass office without stopping. That alone was unusual. At 3:09, the subject line appeared across 3 different departments at once. Compensation variance review. Immediate. No emojis, no soft language, no buffering phrases. Immediate. The kind of word that doesn't ask, it instructs. Inside her office, HR read it once, then again. Her posture remained composed, but something in the stillness shifted, like a calculation being rerun with a variable that wasn't supposed to exist. She tapped the message open. Attached, a file name, pay_gap_analysis _V3 .xlsxv3 final, which meant there had been earlier versions, which meant someone had been working on this longer than today. Across the floor, Daniel saw the same email. His thumb hovered over the screen for a second longer than necessary before opening it. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. Not fear, not yet, just inconvenience. Another internal audit. Routine. It had to be. But when the spreadsheet loaded, the structure didn't look routine. Columns layered with precision. Filters already applied. Notes embedded with timestamps. This wasn't a quick pull. This was built. Deliberately. On another floor, behind a closed door, the CFO didn't open the file immediately. He looked at the timestamp first. 1510, scheduled review, then at the sender. Compensation analytics, internal flag. Not external compliance, not annual audit, internal, which meant the trigger came from within. He opened the file. Silence, no reaction, no visible shift, just a steady gaze moving across rows, then columns, then back again. Slower this time. Names, departments, base salaries, bonuses, adjustments. And then, a column highlighted in a restrained, almost understated shade. Variance justification. He paused there, scrolled, stopped, scrolled back. Because some of the justifications didn't align, not in tone, not in logic, not in structure. Market alignment, credential-based differentiation, strategic retention. Individually, they made sense. Together, something didn't. At 3:10 exactly, he clicked into the Summary tab. A single number sat at the top. Clean, centered, unavoidable. $28 million. Total unexplained compensation variance. Not projected, not theoretical, documented. He didn't speak, didn't call anyone immediately, just reached for the internal line and pressed a single button. Send HR now. No raised voice, no urgency in tone, but the instruction landed with absolute weight. Back in her office, HR's phone rang. She knew before answering, not because of intuition, because of timing. And timing in systems like this is never accidental. She picked up. Yes. A pause. Then a response she couldn't quite soften, no matter how neutral she tried to sound. I'll be there. Across the floor, Daniel leaned back in his chair, eyes still on the spreadsheet. For the first time since the meeting, he wasn't thinking about the MBA, or the justification, or even the conversation. He was thinking about the version number, V3. Final, meaning this wasn't a reaction, it was preparation. And suddenly, the moment she stopped smiling didn't look like discomfort. It looked like a decision, because somewhere between that meeting and 3:10, the conversation had already moved to a room he wasn't in, and whatever was about to be said there wasn't going to sound like policy. If you've ever seen a room agree too quickly, you already know how this ends. Not with noise, with a document. Subscribe and stay close, because in Chapter 3, the door closes, the file opens, and one line changes everything. At 3:12, the door closed. Not loudly, not with authority, just a soft, controlled click that separated two versions of the same company, the one that explained things and the one that verified them. The CFO didn't stand to greet her. He didn't need to. The screen between them was already turned slightly in her direction, not fully offered, not withheld either, an invitation without ceremony. Walk me through it. No accusation, no framing, just a request that assumed there was something to walk through. HR placed her tablet on the table, aligning it instinctively with the edge, a habit she didn't notice she was mirroring. Then she sat, calm, measured, composed. Compensation differentiation is aligned with credential weighting and retention strategy, she began, voice steady, rehearsed without sounding rehearsed. We benchmark against market data and… He raised a hand slightly, not to interrupt, to narrow. The variance. A pause. Short. Controlled. She nodded once and shifted. The variance reflects layered adjustments over multiple cycles. Promotions, lateral moves, retention packages. He turned the screen. Fully this time. A single section was expanded. Clean rows, minimal color, no dramatics, but the precision made it louder. Employee ID 44721. Role, Senior Operations Analyst, tenure 6.8 years. Performance rating exceeds 4 consecutive cycles. Below it, another row. Employee ID 55209. Role, Senior Operations Analyst, tenure 1.2 years. Performance rating meets 1 cycle. Credential, MBA, Yale. The compensation columns sat side by side. Not exaggerated, not rounded, exact. The gap wasn't subtle, it didn't need to be. HR didn't look away. That differential, she said carefully, is supported by credential-based weighting. The Yale MBA, he didn't react to the name, didn't challenge it, just moved 1 column to the right. Variance, justification, free text, manual entry, cursor blinking. A small detail, but it mattered. Who inputs this, he asked. Compensation partners, reviewed by HR leadership. Automated checks? For structural consistency, yes? He nodded once, then clicked another tab. Edit history. Timestamps unfolded like a quiet timeline. Version 1, Version 2, Version 3, Final. Each iteration carried annotations, minor adjustments, formatting corrections, alignment notes, and then a pattern, a cluster of edits concentrated in a narrow window. Not weeks, not months, hours. Earlier that day, HR leaned forward slightly. Not enough to signal concern, just enough to read faster. The CFO didn't speak. He scrolled, stopped, opened a comment thread attached to the highlighted row. No names visible at first, just text. Short, direct. Flag for review. Discrepancy exceeds threshold. Recalculate with performance weighting. Check historical adjustments, last 4 cycles. And then the final note. Time stamped 1402, confirmed. Variance unsupported by internal policy. No signature. But there was a system ID, the CFO clicked it. A profile opened. Internal, active, authorized. Name, withheld behind role-based access. But the role itself was visible. Compensation Analytics, Senior Auditor. He leaned back slightly, not in surprise, in confirmation, because this wasn't escalation. This was validation. He turned the screen back toward himself and spoke for the first time in a way that shifted the room. Was this reviewed before implementation? HR held her posture. Yes, within standard approval flows. Documented? Yes. Another pause, measured. Then, show me. Not louder, just final. Across the table, her tablet screen lit up. Files opened, folders navigated, links accessed, Everything was where it should be, structured, archived, available. But something was missing, not visibly, functionally, because every document confirmed the process. None confirmed the decision. The CFO watched without interrupting, without assisting, allowing the silence to do what pressure couldn't. Because in environments like this, absence isn't empty. It's evidence. HR stopped scrolling, just for a second, then resumed, faster, more precise, until she reached the last accessible record. Nothing new, nothing additional, just the same structure? Repeated. She exhaled, quietly, almost imperceptibly, then looked up. For further detail, I can coordinate with compensation analytics. He nodded once. Do that. A beat. And bring me the author of version 3. Not a suggestion, a requirement. Because by now the structure was clear. The policy existed. The process existed. The justification didn't hold. And somewhere between a meeting room and this office, someone had already written that conclusion down. Accurately, precisely. And without asking for permission, the CFO closed the file. Not abruptly, deliberately. Until then, he added, tone unchanged, freeze all related adjustments. That landed, not as panic, as containment. Across the table, HR nodded. Understood. But as she gathered her tablet, one detail lingered. Small, technical, easy to overlook. Version 3 wasn't just marked final, it was locked, meaning no further edits, no revisions, no quiet corrections. Whatever was written there was meant to stay exactly as it was. And outside that room, the system had already started to adjust. Notifications queued, permissions shifted, access reviewed, because once a variance becomes visible, it doesn't stay isolated. It propagates. Quietly, systematically, inevitably. By 3:27, the ripple was no longer subtle. It didn't announce itself with alarms or meetings. It moved through permissions. Access requests paused mid-approval. Compensation dashboards shifted to read-only. A quiet banner appeared at the top of internal tools. Adjustment freeze, pending review. No explanation, just status. In systems like this, status is everything. Across 3 departments, managers noticed it at the same time. Not because they were told, but because something they expected to work didn't. A button that usually confirmed changes now did nothing. A field that allowed edits was suddenly locked. Small friction, but deliberate. Daniel saw it when he tried to open a pending adjustment request. The interface loaded, then stopped. A thin gray line replaced the input fields. Editing disabled. He leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose. Controlled, but not entirely neutral anymore. This wasn't routine. Routine audits don't interrupt workflow like this. Routine audits don't freeze systems. He reached for his phone, scrolled. No direct messages, no explanations. Just the same email from earlier, now flagged with higher priority. Compensation variance review, immediate was still active, meaning whatever was happening wasn't contained yet. At 3:31, HR stepped out of the CFO's office. Her pace didn't change, her posture didn't collapse, but the precision was tighter now, movements reduced to only what was necessary. Efficiency under pressure. She walked straight past her office, didn't stop. Instead, she turned toward a corridor most people avoided unless they had a reason. Compensation analytics. The door there was different. No glass panels. No visibility inside. Access controlled. She tapped her badge. A brief red light, then green. Unlocked. Inside, the atmosphere contrasted sharply with the polished calm of executive floors. Less presentation, more function, dual monitors, open datasets, headphones resting on desks. A space built for verification, not persuasion. At the far end, someone looked up. No surprise, just recognition. "You saw it," he said. Not a question. A statement. HR approached, stopping just short of his desk. "I need the author of version 3. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned one of his monitors slightly toward her. Not fully, just enough. On the screen, the same file, same structure, same precision. But this view was different. Metadata expanded. Audit trail uncollapsed. Everything visible. He clicked into the header. Owner. Compensation analytics. Restricted role. Editor. Last save. 1402. Then, without theatrics, he opened a permissions pane. A single user ID appeared. Not a name, an internal handle. She recognized the format. Senior-level access. Deep system visibility. Not someone who guesses. Someone who confirms. Who is it? She asked. He leaned back slightly. Not defensive. Measured. You already know the role, he said. That's what matters. A pause. Then more precisely, they don't escalate unless it's clean. Clean. Meaning verified across cycles. Meaning cross-checked against policy. Meaning defensible. HR's gaze remained steady, but the silence around that word expanded. Because clean removes interpretation. It leaves only outcome. Bring them, she said. He nodded once. No. That landed differently. Not resistance, constraint. They're already scheduled. A beat. With the CFO. The timeline tightened instantly. No buffer, no staging, direct line. HR exhaled quietly. Not frustration, adjustment. Because whatever control she had in the meeting room didn't extend here. Then I'll be there, she said. He didn't object, didn't agree either, just returned his attention to the screen. Because for his function, the process was already complete. Flag, verify, lock, everything beyond that belonged to a different layer. At 3:36, a calendar update appeared. No subject change, no additional context, just one added attendee. Compensation analytics, senior auditor. Daniel saw it seconds later. His jaw tightened, not visibly enough for others to notice, but internally the alignment shifted. Because now there was a person, not just a file, not just a number, a source, and sources. Answer questions. He checked the time. 3:10 had already passed, which meant the conversation had started without him, and whatever had been said in that room was already shaping everything outside it. Across the building, conversations shortened further. People spoke in fragments, paused mid-thought, closed tabs they didn't need to close, because when systems lock quietly, people start listening differently, not to what's being said, but to what isn't. And somewhere between HR's controlled steps and a locked spreadsheet labeled final, the narrative had shifted from justification to exposure. At 3:41, the room filled without noise. No greetings, no small talk, just the quiet precision of people who understood that whatever was about to be said would not be repeated. The CFO was already there, same posture, same stillness. But now the screen wasn't angled. It was centered, shared. HR took her seat. Daniel followed a second later, movements controlled, almost rehearsed, as if posture alone could stabilize context. Then the door opened once more. No announcement, no introduction. The senior auditor stepped in. Not older, not imposing. Nothing about their presence suggested authority in the traditional sense, but there was something else. Clarity. The kind that doesn't negotiate with atmosphere. They took a seat without waiting to be directed. Opened a laptop. Connected. No delay. The file appeared on the main screen instantly. PAY_GAP_ANALYSIS_V3_FINAL.XLSX, no slides. No executive summary. Just the structure. Raw, exact, complete. The auditor didn't look at anyone, didn't need to. The variance exceeds internal policy thresholds across multiple cycles, they said, tone level, almost neutral. Primary drivers are inconsistent application of performance weighting and unsupported credential multipliers. No emphasis, no dramatics, just terms that didn't leave room for interpretation. Daniel shifted slightly. Credential multipliers are standard in competitive hiring, he said. Not defensive, but firm. The kind of statement designed to re-anchor the conversation in something familiar. The auditor nodded once. They are? A beat. Within defined ranges. The screen changed. A table expanded. Columns aligned with surgical clarity. Policy range, credential adjustment, plus 5% to plus 12% below it, actual applied figures, plus 18%, plus 22%, plus 27%, no highlighting, no arrows. The numbers didn't need help. Daniel's expression didn't collapse, but something recalibrated, because now it wasn't about interpretation, it was about deviation. HR leaned forward slightly. Those figures were part of retention considerations, she said, voice controlled, carefully structured. Market pressure. The auditor clicked again. Another tab. Historical performance weighting. Last 4 cycles. 2 profiles, side by side, consistent ratings on one side, variable, lower ratings on the other. And yet, the compensation curve didn't follow performance. It followed something else, something less structured. The auditor spoke again. Retention adjustments were applied without corresponding performance alignment. No accusation, just mapping. The CFO hadn't moved, hadn't interrupted, but now he leaned forward slightly. Minimal. Intentional. Is the variance explainable within policy? He asked. Not to HR, not to Daniel, to the auditor. A pause. Short. Precise. No. That word landed differently than anything before it, because everything until now had been data. This was conclusion. Final. The room didn't react. It absorbed. HR's hands remained still on the table. Daniel looked at the screen, not searching, not scanning, just holding the numbers in place, as if context might still shift around them. It didn't. The CFO nodded once. Not agreement. Acknowledgement. Then we proceed accordingly. He closed the laptop. Softly, deliberately. The sound marked a boundary. Not the end of a meeting, the end of interpretation. Across the room, no one asked what accordingly meant. They didn't need to. Because in systems like this, actions follow conclusions with mechanical precision. Adjustments reversed, reviews initiated, approvals re-examined, quietly, systematically, without spectacle. The auditor disconnected, already done. HR gathered her tablet, slower this time. Daniel didn't move immediately, because somewhere between a sentence in a meeting room and a locked file labeled Final, the hierarchy had shifted, not publicly, not dramatically, but structurally. And structures don't argue, they adjust. As the room emptied, the screen remained dark. No summary, no follow-up note, just absence. But it wasn't empty. It held a single unspoken line, one that didn't need to be typed. The difference wasn't the MBA, it was the justification. And at 3:10, that stopped holding. Silence.